Hi, this is Sombra. Today I'll tell you a story about a place where silence sounds louder than screams. A sanatorium by the sea that seems to live by its own rules. They call it Selena. Once people came here to heal. Now they come here to disappear. It's said that if you spend even one night there, the sea starts whispering your name. And by morning, you won't remember what it was before. This is the story of a man who only wanted peace, but peace didn't want him. I wasn't going to Selena for miracles. I just needed silence. No calls, no emails, no people. Just a place where no one would ask why I was tired. A colleague told me, "There's the sea, a schedule and treatment." I bought a ticket without thinking. The last few months had turned me into someone who only wanted to sleep. Without thoughts, without explanations. Train first, then a bus. The farther we got from the city, the cleaner the air became. Out the window, I saw old signs, half-abandoned houses, overgrown roadsides. On a rusted road sign written in crooked white paint were the words, "Selena, 3 kilometers." The bus rattled over broken pavement. The driver glanced at me in the mirror and asked, "Headed there?" I nodded. He said nothing, just sighed heavily. When the bus drove off, I was alone. In front of me stood an old building with peeling paint and a flickering lamp above the gate. The lamp seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to let me in. I walked closer. On a metal plaque, Sanatorium Selena. Sea salt had crusted over the letters in white flakes. The air smelled of eucalyptus and rust. Somewhere below the sea murmured, low, lazy, persistent. Inside it was bright and quiet. The floors were gray tile, the walls lined with faded photographs. People in white coats, flowers, the sea. Every face wore the same strained, lifeless smile. Behind the counter sat a man in his 40s. Gray cardigan, neat handwriting in a ledger. He looked up. "Kuznetsov?" "Yes," I said. He ticked something off with a pencil and handed me a key. "Room 207, second floor." And as if remembering something, he pulled out a thin yellow sheet of paper. "The rules," he said. "Read them before bed." I took the sheet automatically. In places like this, they usually list meal times or how to return towels. But the first line made me read it twice. "After 10:10 p.m., do not open your door to anyone, not even staff." I smiled faintly. "Strict place you've got here." He didn't smile back. "It's just order," he said, and nothing more. The corridor was long, like a hospital intestine. A camera blinked red under the ceiling. The lamps buzzed like trapped insects. I walked past the doors. 205, 206, mine 207. The room was clean. A bed, a table, a mirror, a wardrobe. On the nightstand, a bottle of water. A towel hung perfectly straight, as if measured with a level. I dropped my backpack, washed my face, and lay down. The clock read 10:05. 5 minutes until no door opening. A stupid rule. Yet somehow I waited for the hands to pass that mark, as if to prove there was someone behind it. The wind breathed against the window. The sea's murmur deepened. I closed my eyes and heard someone call my name. Softly from outside the window. "Ivan!" My eyes snapped open. The room was empty. I walked to the window, lifted the curtain. The yard was deserted, only the flickering lamp by the gate and the shadow of a tree shaped almost like a person. I stepped back and drew the curtain. The rule echoed in my head. If someone calls you by name from the yard, do not answer. It's not you they're calling. A few minutes later, 3 knocks. Calm, polite. "Who is it?" "Administrator," a man's voice replied. "Please check your water. Routine maintenance." At 10 p.m., I said nothing. Something rustled under the door, a sheet of paper, the same as mine, except rule number 1 had changed. Do not open your door to anyone except staff with a white badge. I looked through the peephole. Empty corridor, no badge, no footsteps. I went back to bed and lay down. Couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like footsteps, every tap. Breathing outside my door. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed that I was standing in my room, but behind me was a mirror. And in the reflection, I looked the same, only I wasn't breathing. I woke up because someone exhaled right next to my ear. The phone screen glowed. 3:17. I didn't know why that time felt important. Then I remembered the 10th rule. If you wake up at 3:17, don't move. Wait until 3:19, then drink some water and rehang your towel. I froze. Even breathing felt wrong, like the air had thickened. Footsteps passed outside the door. Slow, then quiet laughter. Not kind, not cruel. Just testing the sound. I stayed still. 3:19. I sat up, poured water, took 2 sips, went to the bathroom, moved the towel to the other rail. Instantly, the air felt clearer. The footsteps stopped. I lay back down. The room exhaled softly, and for the first time in months, I fell asleep peacefully. Morning felt strangely calm. The air was cool, clean, like it had just rained. I got up, washed my face, and looked straight into the mirror. The towel hung perfectly, no mistakes. Only for a moment it seemed like the shadow in the reflection moved a second later than I did. Probably just my imagination. The same sheet of rules lay on the table. I couldn't help but smile. "Just order," the administrator's voice echoed in my head. I put the paper back and went to breakfast. The dining room was quiet. A few people sat far apart, each at their own table, as if invisible walls separated them. I took a seat by the window, the same one as yesterday. I remembered that mattered. Sit at the same table you chose the first time. While I was eating, a waitress brought another plate, empty. She placed it beside me and walked away. I stared at it, feeling a slow wave of cold move down my back. The rule came to mind on its own. If you notice an extra plate, don't claim it as yours. I pushed it to the edge of the table. At that moment, a woman in a white coat walked up. No badge. She stopped in front of me and just looked. No expression, no words. Just looked. Then I remembered. If you meet a woman without a badge, ask her to smile. If she doesn't, go to the window and count to 40. I looked up. "Please smile," I said quietly. She didn't move, not a single muscle. So I stood up and walked to the window. The sea was gray, almost ash-colored. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. At 40, I could breathe again. When I turned back, the woman was gone, and so was the plate. Before leaving, I noticed the hallway camera flashing green. I froze, waited. After a few seconds, it turned red. Only then did I walk. My brain laughed. "You're actually following this nonsense." But my body didn't argue. It just obeyed. After lunch, I went back to the counter. "Excuse me," I asked, "is there a room 214? The administrator lifted his eyes. "No. It's just, I saw a light under the door." "You must have mistaken the floor," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes said something else. "You weren't supposed to see that." I nodded and left. That evening, the corridor was quieter than usual. As I passed 214, a narrow stripe of light glowed under the door. I stopped, and then someone whispered, "Hey, please, just one question." The voice was young, frightened. "If this is your first time here, don't look at the cameras when they're green." A pause. They looked back. I didn't answer. The voice continued, trembling. "And if they give you a new paper, don't sign it. Once you sign, they can rewrite you." Silence, then barely audible. "And if the woman in white asks you to smile, don't. That's her rule, not yours." Somewhere downstairs, the elevator clanged. It shouldn't have been working. I stepped back, and a yellow sheet slid out from under the door. My name was printed at the top. Below, an empty line for my signature. I didn't touch it. I went back to my room. But that night, the paper was already waiting on my desk, folded neatly. At the bottom, my signature. I never wrote it, but the handwriting was mine. At 3:17, I woke up. I didn't even check the clock. I already knew. Silence. Then a whisper at the door. "You forgot to move the towel." I stood up. The towel was hanging the old way. I rehung it. The whisper stopped, and in the mirror for just a second, my reflection leaned closer to the glass. I wasn't scared. I just understood something simple and terrible. Whatever this place was, it knew the rules better than I did. The next morning, I woke up with the feeling that someone had touched my hands while I slept. Not roughly, not painfully, just checking if I was still there. Thin marks circled my wrists like from invisible threads. On the table lay the same sheet, but the title had changed. Individual rules for the stay of Ivan Kuznetsov. And below it, 1. If you notice someone mirroring your movements, don't be the first to stop. 2. If there are 2 of you in the mirror, leave the room and wait until there's only 1. 3. If someone calls you by another name, don't argue. I stared at those lines for a long time. No fear, no surprise, just emptiness. As if a part of me already knew this would happen. The corridor smelled of salt and iron. The windows were fogged over, and I realized I hadn't seen the sun in days. Everything here was gray, as if the sanatorium stood not by the sea, but beneath it. Downstairs, I saw a man sitting against the wall, facing the exit. He held a crumpled sheet in his lap. When I passed by, he whispered, "Don't look at the water." I stopped. "Why?" He turned his head slowly. His eyes were pale, as if he hadn't slept for years. "Because if you stare long enough," he said, "the water starts staring back." I wanted to ask more, but he lowered his head and went silent again. That afternoon, they announced free time. I went outside. The sea was close, maybe 100 meters away. Fog rolled low across the sand, and the waves looked alive, breathing under a thin veil. There were people on the beach, all standing still, each staring at one point, the horizon. Every one of them held a yellow sheet of paper. I walked closer. The first man's paper was blank, completely, no rules, no name. The woman next to him, hers was full, every inch covered in words, as if someone had typed without stopping. I lifted my eyes. The sea shifted, and on its surface, letters began to appear. My handwriting, my signature. I stepped back, and one of the people, the man with the blank sheet, took a step forward. The water didn't resist. It accepted him. No splash, no sound. He just disappeared, as if dissolving into his own reflection. That evening, I returned to my room. Everything was in place, except the mirror. It was slightly larger, half a centimeter maybe, but I felt it immediately. I tried to sleep, but one thought kept repeating. If the rules can change, then someone must be writing them. At 3:17, I woke again. But this time, the clock showed no numbers, just black light. and a slow, steady breathing from the mirror. I sat up, the surface trembled, and I realized I wasn't looking at my reflection. I was looking into another room, an exact copy of mine, empty. A chair stood in the center, and on it, a single sheet of paper. I walked closer. On the other side, someone moved at the same time, perfectly synchronized. We both leaned in to read it. It said just 3 words. "Which one's you?" I didn't have time to answer. The mirror rippled like water, and it pulled me in. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a bed again, but it wasn't my room. A small sign on the wall read, 214. Light seeped under the door, and on the desk lay a new sheet. The title read, "Rules for Staff of Sanatorium Selena." The first rule said, "When new guests arrive, smile." I walked to the mirror, and for a brief silent moment I understood I was the one standing on the other side now. 3 months passed. On the Selena website, it still says sanatorium temporarily closed for renovation. But the photos keep changing, quietly, every week. In one of them, I saw a familiar window. Room 207. The curtain was slightly lifted, and if you look close, someone standing inside. Shoulders a silhouette, head tilted, as if listening. I zoomed in. The face was blurred, but the movement, I recognized it. It was mine. Since then, I often dream of the sea. It doesn't make waves anymore. It breathes. And every time I walk closer, words rise on the surface. "Welcome back, Ivan Kuznetsov." And in the morning, when I open my laptop, a new email is waiting. The sender, Sanatorium Selena. The subject line, simple. "Your room is ready."
Don't forget to subscribe. The next story might be real, and it could happen to you.